So the last time I had a forum like this was in 2019. And the reason I'm holding it now is because ang dami ng mga questions, so much questions that are now being asked of people. What's happening to our investment? Should we invest now? Should we take out our funds? Should we move to other funds? So hopefully this afternoon we will be able to answer these questions by understanding, first of all, the fundamentals of investing. So, of course, I don't need to speak about myself. I think the most important credential that I have here is the CFC credential, which is the Certified Financial Consultant credential that I have, which is usually a course given to finance managers and accounting managers, because it helps to determine what the valuation should be of certain investments. And of course, when I was still teaching at the Ateneo, one of the subjects I taught there was operations research, which normally facilitated the computation of what proportion of money should you give to certain investments relative to other investments. It's putting together a portfolio of investments. So it has got something to do with the value of money, of course. Now, first of all is why talk of investments? When you're advisors, you really talk of investments from a simple point of view. And if you remember, there are only two possible life scenarios for people. For everyone, there's only two possible scenarios. The first one is because we live too short. And when we talk of living too short, it's because we are not ready to go, because we still have a lot of problems that we need to face for our families. The children are too young. There are hospital bills to pay. There's the cost of interment that we may not have prepared for. There's outstanding debts that we still have to settle, and maybe we have loans to pay. We have the real estate tax, not as big anymore as before, but still substantial. The children and the grandchildren could fight over the estate that we leave behind if we had not settled everything. And there's the lawyers that they have to pay, that they have to reckon with in order to make sure that everything is in order, everything is equitably done and fairly done for every heir. And last of all, the most important one, I think, is the consideration that the persons, the loved ones that we leave behind, will have to continue living, will have to reckon with the cost of living. So it will still be taking us out of the picture. When we say we live too short, we are taken out of the picture before all of these things are settled. And if we are not prepared, instead of leaving behind nice memories for those that we leave behind a lot of problems that will make them want maybe not to have even let you go before these things are settled. The other side of it, of course, is if we can live too short, then we can also live too long. And the problem with living too long is that our expenses will continue to increase. We will still continue to pay for expenses, and our expenses will continue to increase year by year. Every year it gets bigger. Are we prepared for that? And since we're retired or unable to work much anymore, we cannot really support ourselves anymore with trying to earn a living because we are retired. The medical bills could increase because we are getting older. We need help for most physical activities, but instead of of trying to look optimistic that our children will be around to help us. The reality is that children have their own lives to live and they have their own problems. We wouldn't want to burden them. So we would rather keep our problems to ourselves, and they can get really daunting. They can really become very difficult for us. And the thing is, when you reach that kind of age, there's really nobody around who you could probably relate much to, because your friends are gone. You would like to meet new friends, so maybe you'd like to travel, but again, it could be too risky for your health, and sometimes it's really a burden. I mean, we've gone on travels, and many of our companions really complained of difficulty moving around because their body is no longer able to support themselves. So ang unang bumibigay, yung mga tuhod nila, mga paa nila, can get very difficult. And of course, in the last 3 years, from 20 to 22, we were of course burdened by the threat of getting COVID infection. So, and then of course the body will give out, you know what it is. Sometimes the kidneys give out, the urinary bladder cannot be controlled anymore. So it can really be messy for us. And that's a big problem. So both of the situations require that we prepare. And when we talk of preparation, we talk of having money. So first of all, let's consider the cost of living. Over time, if we assume only a 3% inflation rate, every year, if the prices of basic goods and commodities and services increase by 3%, what usually may take only to spend 10,000 pesos a month for us can actually become a big burden. No? For the next 30 years, we can expect to be spending about 5.7 million of money. And if you retire today and your expenses are very tipid, no? You're very, how do you call that? Very prudent with your expenses. Still, you would need to have about 5.7 million over the next 30 years just to be able to meet your 10,000 a month expenses today. If you bring that up to 15,000, the amount that you would be spending over the next 30 years expands to 8.5 million. And if it's 20,000, it's 11.4. If it's 30,000 a month now, which is probably very reasonable, no? If you're living today and you're spending 30,000 a month as a retiree, you're looking to spend over 17 million over the next 30 years if you live that long. If you live that long, so maybe you say, I don't want to live that long. But if you can have a good life, if you have preparations, and you live another 30 years, you have the money, why not? Probably enjoy the life that you have. So I'm not even going to talk about 50,000 a month and 100,000 a month. Look at the amount that you would need. So that should require you to think about, well, I need to have money by the time I stop working, because if that's going to be my expenses, that's how much I really need to save up. So if you were to retire with 30,000 a month expenses, now if you say, when I retire, I need 30,000 a month, equivalent to what I'm spending now, 30,000. But by the time you retire, could be much higher. Could be much higher. So you're talking about more than 17 million. Now, what is really enough money for you? The idea here is again saving up. I mean, there's no way you can provide for the future without saving up money. And you save that up from the time that you have work. And you can set aside a certain amount of your work. How much do you need to set aside? Well, the basic idea, I would say, is the wise idea is you set aside 20% of what you earn every month. 20, not just 10%. 20%. Why? For practical reasons, because government employees in the Philippines today, they set aside about 21% of what they earn every month. And that's to prepare only for retirement. But when they retire, their needs are substantially provided for by what they set, 21%. So for practical reasons, I would say 20% is good. If you can, if you go to the YouTube and watch people there talk about how they prepared for retirement early, you would probably take note that many of them would recommend setting aside about 20%, or not just 20%, but 40% of their income. And there was one video I came across with that said that he set aside 60% of what he earned every month, 60%, so that he could retire before he was even 40. So that's the idea, because the whole idea that is that when you retire at 60 in the Philippines, you probably will have only enough that you have accumulated to be able to live comfortably until your age 90. When you use up everything that you have set aside and build for yourself enough wealth to be able to take care of your future needs over the next 30 years, because that's what we're probably looking at, next 30 years. I mean, if you work all your life until you're 60, you probably want to enjoy all the fruits of your labor. By the time you retire, you'd want to have leisure time with yourself, with your family, with your apo, with your friends, enjoy life and not have to work anymore for money. I'm sure everyone looks forward to that. So taking a look at the accumulation stage, knowing that we can set aside only about 20% to, if you want to, until 60% of your monthly income to provide for the future, for the time that you want to stop, or you'll have to stop working. There are several ways that you can grow that money. You need to grow that money, because if you do not grow that money, inflation alone will eat up all your savings. So the first option there is you need to set aside something. Now I didn't change this chart anymore from the time I made this before, way back, because the same principles apply. But if you look at this chart, it says you just simply set aside 20,000 per year. That we say you're looking at somebody who is probably just earning about 150,000 a year. That's basically nothing. It's about that's 30,000 would have about 360,000. Now, but just to illustrate the difference between different approaches for you to accumulate money. Now, if you just set your money aside and put that into a savings account that gives you only 2% interest per annum, you'd end up, instead of the 360,000 that you've saved aside every year, you would end up with 360,000 for 18 years. You set aside 360,000. What happens to your 360,000? It becomes 466,000. So there's a little bit of gain. But if you put that into bonds, you bought bonds for it, where the bonds give you a 6% rate of interest, and you did not take the interest. Instead, you rolled it over, you reinvested the interest income from your bonds, you rolled it over, you'd end up after 18 years with 716,000 pesos. It's a substantial jump from 360,000 to 716,000. It's almost double. But if you put that into loans, where normally you would get higher returns for loans, right now about 8%, maybe I think it's about 12% now, 12% per annum, you'd end up with 895,000 from 360,000 pesos. And if you happen to put that money into business and get a return of 10% per annum, it is very possible when you go into business, just 10% per annum, that you'll end up with 1.1 million, from 360,000 to 1.1 million. Obviously, if you look at these approaches, the best approach would really be to go into business, because you have the potential to earn a much higher return. You have the potential to earn a much higher return with business. But the problem really is when you go into business, it's not really so easy. Okay, that's what we will discuss that in a while. Now, how much on the other hand, the moment you have accumulated money like that, what happens when you invest that in something, in a business that earns a return of 12% per annum instead of only 10? If you assume 12% return on investment and you set aside 1,500 pesos a month, the money you will have in 10 years, assuming you get a return of 12% per annum, will be 345,000. Now, 1,500 a month for the next 10 years would be how much? 1, 5 times 1, 2, that's how much? About 30,000 a year? Oh, sorry. Napurol bigla ang utak ko. So you have 15, 1,500 times 12, that's 18,000 a year, times 10 years, you'd have saved 180,000. Instead, if you put it in a business, excuse me, instead, if you put that money into a business that earns for you 345, that earns for you 12% per annum, you would have 345,000 by the end of the 10 years. If you continue setting that 1,500 aside for another 10 years, so you get after 20 years, what you will get is not just 360,000. 1.5 will give you 180,000 in 10 years. So 360,000 in 20 years, that's what you set aside. But you will have 1.4 million, almost 1.5 million in money at the end of 20 years. If you did that with 3,000 a month, you'd have almost 3 million. 4,500 a month is 4.45 million. And sometimes I often talk with taxi drivers. If I find them driving a taxi, I just simply ask them the question, how long have you been driving? And they will say, I have been driving for the last 10 years. 10 years. So I said, is this taxi your own? No, I just drive for, how do you call that? Yung, basta may rental sila, may car-rental sila every month. They pay the owner of that taxi. So I told them, so do you know that if you put aside 100 pesos a day, can you afford to set aside 100 pesos a day? Because if you could afford to set aside 100 pesos a day, that's 3,000 a month. And you've been driving for the last 10 years. If you had done that, you would already have bought your own units, maybe several units. Kasi pwede yan, kasi down payment ka lang, basta may scheme para kumita ka na mas malaking pera. So, this is the whole idea. The interest or the earnings percentage is the driver that makes you earn more money. Now, in how many years will your money double? Supposing you have already accumulated so much cash and you don't want to put in more cash into it. You want to stop putting in more cash and enjoy your money. Fine, you can still do that. So what you do to estimate how long it will take to double your money is you take the number 72 and then you divide 72 by the rate of return on your investment. So for example, if you take the number 72 and you're given a 2% return per annum on your investment, it will take you 72 divided by 2 equals 36. It will take 36 years to double your money. So if you get a higher rate, of 6% per annum, you take 72 divided by 6, you will end up with 12 years to double your money. So in other words, kung may 1 million ka na, iwanan mo lang dyan, yung 1 million mo gives you 6% return per annum, it will double into 2 million after 12 years. And if you get a rate of return of 10% per annum, 72 divided by 10 will give you 7.2 years. So it will take you only 7 years to double your money. Now, following this technique of computing how much money they needed, I was actually able to double the money of a lot of my investors way back in during the global crisis of 2007. I waited for the decline of values of investment to happen, and from 2007 that started to happen January of 2009. So 2009, I advised my clients, if they had the money, this is the time for you to put in your money, because this is not probably going to happen again within your lifetime. And those who followed my advice, in 2 years, they doubled their money. In other words, what they got was a rate of return of 36% per annum. 36% per annum, but will it happen again? I don't know. There seems to be an opportunity for those who are listening today that this may happen, but not to the same degree. It could happen within this year, that if you listen to what we are discussing today, you have the opportunity to grow your money a lot faster, double your money, maybe even in the next 4 years. It could happen. Okay? So, what happens if you have that money already? Of course, after you've accumulated so much money for yourself and you're ready to retire, you're ready to give up working, you just want to make your money work for you, you need to have an estimate how long your money will last. Now, let's take a look at only one example. That the money that you've accumulated continues to earn 12% return per annum. 12% return per annum. Remember, that 12% return per annum is possible if you run a business. Maybe not if you just deposit your money. Maybe not if you just invest in low return financial instruments. But in business, 12% per annum is very, very feasible. And I will discuss later on why you may not want to invest in business despite the 12% per annum. But here it is. Supposing you've already accumulated 1 million pesos. You don't want to put in more money into that. Instead, you want to withdraw from that 1 million a month, an amount every month until it gets exhausted. So I'm present here two scenarios. What pension will you get for 10 years? What monthly pension will you get for 10 years? And what monthly pension will you get for 25 years? Assuming that you have a way for you to earn continuously 12% per annum. So with 1 million, what you will get is, when you invest that 1 million at 12% per annum, is you can get a monthly pension of 14,347 for the next 10 years hanggang maubos. If you want to make it last longer, 25 years, for example, don't get more than 10,532 per month for the next 25 years. So in other words, if you come in with a lot higher amount than the 1 million, you will have more per month. You will have a monthly pension that can be very, very lucrative for the lifestyle that you will want to lead. For example, the 3 million that you invest at 12% per annum can last you for 10 years, where it gives you 43,041 per month. But if you want to stretch that to 25 years, don't get more than 31,597 per month for the next 25 years. So 31,597 per month for the next 25 years, may monthly pension ka kahit di ka magtrabaho. The idea is palakihin mo talaga ang invest mo. You look at to 5 million, 8 million, 15 million, 25 million. Can you make it? Is it possible for you to reach that? Well, let's talk about it. Okay. We talk therefore of not just depositing the money, but investing the money. There's a big difference. There are investment risks, but there are also good rewards for investment. The rule is the bigger the expected reward, the bigger the risks that you must take. So you have to understand the risk and find out whether you can handle the risks. Okay. Now, what can you do so that you can have a high return? Well, the first option is, of course, to run your own business. The second, if you can't handle your own business, you don't have the savvy, you don't have the expertise, you don't have the confidence, maybe you can invest in someone else's business. Makes sense, right? You know people around. So maybe you can invest in their business and ride on their profits so that your investment will also have profits. The next one that you can have is to invest it in real estate. Why? The logic is very simple. The prices of real estate will keep going up until they can manufacture more real estate for us. But you know, until the time that we can go to the other planets outside of Earth, there's no additional land that we can produce. There's possibly only yung reclaimed land, but it's not going to be substantial. So land will keep on increasing. Whoever owns the land will keep on increasing in value. The other one is we can invest in government securities. Let me explain in a while what that is going to be. What are government securities? We can also invest in corporate securities. Corporate securities, I will explain that also in a while. Or maybe we can invest in funds, managed funds. And of course, last is life insurance investment. We will discuss that in a while in turn. So for now, let's take a look. We of course know the business, okay? But is it a good idea to run your own business? The risks are this. You could try many kinds of businesses, and without proper experience, proper guidance, proper resources, it might not be the right business for you. So when you put in your money there, you run a risk of losing all your money and not recovering anything. You know what they say? For every 10 new businesses that are put up, only one becomes successful. 9 become failures. Why? Because they're still learning. Why did that one become successful? Because he had failed 9 times before. So on the 10th time, panalo na siya kasi alam niya na yung negosyo. Now, the second question there is, do you know how to start a business? And after starting it, do you know how to run it well? That is really the issue with having your own business. Okay? And if you think this is the idea for you, start something small that you know how to run well and then expand it later on. The thing is about business is you really need capital. I had a kumari before. She was very excited to go into business for herself for the first time. And to make it, to almost guarantee her success in business, she bought a franchise. I think it was a potato corner. She invested in a potato corner cart and she put it in a mall. She was very excited. She visited that cart every day to find out how much income she had gained every day. And she was, the first month, she was kind of excited because the money started to come in. But after a few months, it would not grow anymore. It was at that level. And it remained at that level. It would not grow. The revenue would not expand. And she said to me, I'm so disappointed because it became stagnant. It remained at the same level. Fine. The reason why I told her was that, you know, you're dealing with food. When you're dealing with food, you want to have as many people as possible eat out of your place. Now, if you run a cart, you only have maybe 3 people who can stand beside the cart, order from you, and you'd have a profit from them. Only 3 people. What do you need to do in order to earn more? Expand the ledges of the cart. So damihan mo, pahabain mo so that many people can stand beside the cart and order from you. But once you do that, it becomes already a karinderya. It's no longer a cart. And if you want people to be seated within your karinderya, what you do? You grow, you put in more tables and chairs, and it becomes a restaurant. And that shows that it requires capital. Any business that wants to earn more will have to put in more capital. Can you do that? Now, the next, of course, the burden. The burden of managing it. It's not, you'd have to have systems. You'd have, for most businesses, you'd need to have inventory. And you'd have to have people working with you. And if you have the skills of running all of that together, then maybe you can handle the business. But if you cannot, if you're just going to be stressed, aside from the fact that you'd always be worrying about losing your capital, maybe that's not the way for you. So the second option is if running a business for you is not your thing, maybe you could invest in someone else's business. But the problem arises. Whose business will you invest in? Whose business? Do you know anyone who will let you invest in their business? Has anyone invited you? Has anyone talked with you? Do you have confidence in that person? Is it the best business for you? Is it something that you'd like to do? Because if it's not something that you'd like to do, maybe you'll just worry yourself to death about it. Can you trust the person that you gave the money to so that your investment would give you the return that you're expecting? Without the element of trust, I would suggest that you keep out of the transaction. Even if you do that with your relatives, brothers and sisters, this comes from my personal experience. I knew one time I had a brother who needed help with his business. So I agreed to help him with the business. I put in money. And when I put in the money, I did not expect my money to ever return anymore. Because he's my relative, he's my brother. I would rather not damage our relationships if things soured with him and his business. And that has allowed me to maintain good relationships. If I had not done that, the relationship would have been shut. So don't do that ever with your relatives unless things are very, very clear and you are very strong in your heart that this is something that you want to do because you'd rather want to help somebody. Next is, you know that when you invest in somebody else's business, there's a very big chance that the business will lose money and will close down. So the whole idea is, are you ready to lose all your investments once the business closes down? If it closes down, that should be your worst scenario and should be ready for it. And last but not least, are you okay not to have your money back right away in case of an emergency? Because the moment you put in capital in a business, you cannot take it out. Capital is the lifeblood of any business. If you withdraw your capital from it, it's like getting getting blood out of your body. You'd become lifeless. So you have to leave the money there. Even in an emergency, you should be ready not to touch that money. Okay, so option 3, real estate. It makes sense, but the downside with real estate is that you cannot immediately turn it into cash if your need arises. It may not be possible to do that. If your children are inheriting it from you, will they have the cash to pay the inheritance tax just in case? Because they'd have to pay that in order for the inheritance to go to them. Will the return on investment be good? It depends. They're not equal for different real estate projects. They're not the same. It depends on who is running the company that you bought real estate from. I mean, the specific example there would be, you take the developers like Ayala, maybe SM, you have also yung DM Kunsunhi and others, no? Among them, there's a difference in what they can offer to the public for the same amount of floor space. Why? Because of the reputation that they have developed as to the kind of developers that they are. Okay. Uh, Honestly, I would find that when you buy an Ayala property, it maintains its value because they live up to the contract that they have with you in maintaining a place. For example, common today is buying a condominium. Buying a condominium from Ayala is not the same as buying a condominium from SM, from the same condominium from Kunsunhi, from Mega World, and these developers. Why? Because of the track record of how they manage their real estate projects. Real estate projects for Ayala usually maintain their value and people want to invest with them. So, good. Is the investment of good quality? Of course, that has to do with your developer. Is it the best choice for your money? Well, therein lies the question. It may not be the best choice for your money if you have different objectives. Your objectives do not align with the developers. Should I have to personally look after it? Here is a common issue here is that many people buy real estate properties in order to lease them out later on so that they have income, what they call passive income. The thing that they forget is that one day they grow old and they may not be able to look after the property themselves. They may not be able to collect rental money. They may not be able to look at whether the place is being maintained so that it maintains its value. I have kumare who invested in a house in Baguio. She lives in Parañaque. She leased it out to a Koreano. I'm sorry to say, I'm not. It's not that I'm trying to say that Koreans have bad practices, but she leased it out to a Korean family and was not able to visit the place until after about 3 years. So when she visited her property after 3 years in Baguio, she found that the original lessors were no longer around. They had subleased it to other Koreans for money, for extra money. And that kumari of mine was able to travel and visit Baguio. Imagine if you invested in something that far and you were already 70, 80 years old and you find it hard to already travel. Of course, they can pay rentals through remittances, through the remittance systems right now that we have. But what if they don't pay? What if the place is run down? What if you have to lease it out to somebody again, but it's already run down? So there are things that you have to be able to do when you buy real estate if that is supposed to be your way of investing. And of course, the problem really is do you have the cash to invest? I think BDO accepts financing up to 60% of the value of the property. When you buy something, 60%, they will finance it. 40% is your down payment. And the question is, should your cash be cashed out at that time for you just to have a rental property? Next is the number 4 and 5 option, government securities and corporate securities. That means securities are usually in the form of stocks and bonds. Should you buy stocks and bonds? Should you sell? Should you hold on to? These are the questions that are essentially that you need to ask if you are investing in securities. What is the right price to buy or sell? How can I buy and sell? Do you have the means? Do you have the facility? Again, the inheritance tax or the estate tax is there. Will your children be able to pay? Am I okay with having only a limited portfolio? Because if you have limited amount of cash to invest, you will be able to buy only a limited amount of securities. Do I actually have the time to monitor and take necessary action on my portfolio if necessary? And it is at this point that I would like to discuss more about the securities because to most people, it is not a very familiar type of investment. Securities. Okay. Let's talk of financial securities, the basic concepts of financial securities. This comes from the fact that securities are usually investments in an operation, a going operation. That going operation can be government or it can be corporate. So when we talk of financial securities, we talk of what goes into operations. And normally, when you go into operations, you have assets. First of all, you have assets so that the assets can make you perform certain activities that will give revenue. Okay? So government, ang asset yun is actually marami. But ang service na pinoprovide ng mga assets na yon allows the government to collect taxes from people. So the assets are essentially there so that the business owns something from on which to build an income. Now, ang katumbas ng assets na yan, if you were in accounting, you would only have assets if you put in money. And the money that you put in comes from two sources. First, utang. Inutang mo yung pera para makabili ka ng asset. Okay? Kung hindi mo man inutang, merong nag-ambag sa'yo, nagiging partner mo sa business, nagbigay sa'yo ng capital. So that's represent what a business owes, utang. Pero ang what a business owns is equity. Okay? Ito yung nilagay mo na sarili mo. Pag-aari mo yan. And from the combination of what you borrowed and what you put in, you can now buy things, that make you earn revenue, what a business has. So let's take a look at the first type of financial security, the fixed income security. The fixed income security, first of all, ang classification nito is utang. Ang fixed income security is utang, ang nature niya. Okay? May maturity date siya. Nag-uutang ka, siyempre, pag nag-utang ka, pag nangutang ka, o kaya ikaw nagpautang, may deadline yan kung kailan babayaran, and that is a maturity date. At ang amount na babayaran mo is the face amount. Okay? Is paid in full already at the maturity. Yun yung na nature na yun. Okay. Now, ang maturity could vary depending kung sino ang nangungutang. Kung kailangan mo yung pera only for the next year, di 1 year lang ang utang mo. If you need it for the next 3 years, 3 years lang ang utang mo. If you need it for 5 years, 5 years lang, and so on and so forth. Pero seldom does it go beyond, medyo mahaba pa na more than 30 years. Government securities pwedeng umabot ng 30 years. So in other words, tandaan mo, how much is your age and how old are you today? Tandaan mo how much, kailan magmamature yun. Would you invest in a security that will mature in 30 years when you are already 70 years old? Hindi, siyempre, hindi. Hindi mo na makukolekta yun. Of course, makukolekta ng heirs mo, pero ikaw hindi mo ma-enjoy yan. Bakit ka pa nag-invest? What for? What for did you invest? May babalik ba sa'yo? Not within your lifetime. So titingnan mo yung maturity date, no? Okay? The fixed interest is paid by the borrower to the lender. Mali. Paid by the borrower to the loaner. To the lender. Borrower to the lender. Okay? Borrower to the lender usually at periodic intervals. So most of the fixed income securities have a coupon rate. Ang coupon rate na yon represent how much interest ang dapat babayaran every year hanggang mag-mature. Pag na-mature, babayaran na yung face amount. Now, the lender, however, is not required to collect himself. Pwede niya ibenta yung instrument of debt na yon, yung security na yon na tawag. Pwede niya ibenta, can sell the debt to a third party, which when this happens, the lender sells to a third party, nagkakaroon tayo ng tinatawag na secondary market. Pero pinag-uusapan ang presyo dyan. Kung halimbawa siya naglabas ng 100,000 pesos, ang kanyang ibebenta, magbibigay din ba ng 100,000 pesos? Depende. Titingnan natin mamaya what affects the market price. Okay? Now, what are the basic kinds of fixed income securities that we have? Unang-una, there's only government that can borrow. Tawag doon is a sovereign debt. Kasi gobyerno yan. And wala pang gobyerno sa buong kasaysayan ng society that did not pay its debt. Because a government that does not pay its debt is doomed to failure and is doomed to be overthrown. So no government does not want to pay its debt. In the past, we had such a problem. When the government was in a tight fix, it could not almost pay the debts that it had gotten, and we were in danger of what we call defaulting. Magde-default na kasi June na siya, hindi makabayad, default ang tawag diyan. So, ano yung ini-issue ng government? It should be in the form of treasury notes and bonds. Ang notes normally are less than less than 10 years. Ang bonds are longer. Ang maturity niya longer than 10 years. Okay? Meron ding treasury bills. Ang treasury bills naman, less than 1 year ang maturity niya. Okay? Less than 1 year ang maturity niya. Pero itong mga notes and bonds, yun ang usually na binibili ng tao because dito nagkakaroon ka ng income when you have that. So treasury notes and bonds and bills. Bills short term, notes and bonds 10 years or longer. Okay? Then the second kind is of course the corporate. Okay? And for this corporations issue bonds. Normally mga 5-year bonds ito because when you are in business you want to find out whether your returns will already be good in 5 years. Bihirang longer than that, no? Most the corporate bonds are like mabilisan lang yan. Parang ano lang siya, para lang pang bridge ng financing gap para sa kailangan lang. And you also have preferred shares. Ang preferred shares, walang maturity. Except that, nisabi na, ang preferred shares can be redeemable in so many years. So after so many years, you surrender the preferred shares para mabalik mo yung value ng preferred shares mo. And normally, this can be longer. Preferred shares, pwedeng longer yan. To give more time, and then may option ang mga bumili ng preferred shares that they can make it into permanent shares, common shares of the corporation. I will explain in a while. Okay? And of course, there are deposit accounts that you can put into banks for interest rates. So ito yung mga specific na pwede mong bilhin when you are buying fixed income securities. When you buy that, you hope to get an income or an earning from that. Okay? Then last but not least, we have the derivatives. Ang derivatives naman, kaya tinatawag siyang derivatives kasi they are taken, the value of the derivatives come from the value of the underlying assets. They may be fixed income securities ang assets or they may be equities, pwedeng ganon. Tapos galing doon kung anong total value noon, mag-i-issue din ang borrower ng security, parang papel that shows may utang siya sa iyo. Ang katumbas ng utang niya yung asset na hinahawakan niya. So parang may security. It's not the usual na lender ka tapos meron kang asset na hinahawakan. Hindi, ito parang pinagsama mo yung value tapos out of that value you divide the value into several securities kung saan, let's say, total value niya is 1 million, pinaghati-hati mo yan like size to 1,000, no? To 1,000 na shares. So, 1,000 securities, 1,000 units of securities. So, bawat security na in-issue mo is worth 1,000. So, pangutang ka sa 1,000 people na tag 1,000 each, that forms the 1 million value that you have already. What are the purposes of the securities? In government, the government uses the money to put up special projects usually para sa infrastructure. Kasi ang trabaho ng gobyerno, makakapag-provide lang siya ng service sa citizens pag nandyan na yung infrastructure. So kung magbabayad yung mga citizens, magbabayad sila ng taxes. Paggamit ng mga gamit ng gobyerno para to serve the citizens, merong taxes na kinukolekta ang gobyerno. Pero kung wala siyang ipuput up na facilities, wala namang babayaran paano naman ang tao magbabayad ng taxes diyan? Kailangan nandun muna yung facility. So the government finances the establishment of these facilities, gaya ng infrastructure, bago siya makakolekta ng taxes. That's why you see government borrowing a lot of money because most of that money goes into financing infrastructure. It can also be used to refinance utang. Halimbawa, nangutang ang gobyerno 5 years ago. This year, June na yung babayaran niya sa mga inutang niya. Pero hindi pa ready ang gobyerno magbayad. So the government issues new securities, new bonds, and treasury notes para yung utang mababayaran, pero para ma-extend uli yung due date sa pagbabayad ng mga utang na yun. So that is what happens. In corporations naman, these are usually issued to finance their operations and to finance utang and to finance capital expenditure. Okay? Yun na naman ang purpose ng ng corporation, para magkaroon sila ng capital, to add more capital para lumaki ang business. Okay? And again, pwede rin mangyari na may utang ang isang kumpanya na malaki, June ang babayaran, hindi pa siya ready magbayad, ini-extend niya yung pagbabayad by issuing a new set of fixed income securities. Okay. Marketability. How are they marketed? Pwede bang ibenta? Pwedeng ibenta. Okay? Because bonds can be bought or sold, they provide liquidity. They are almost like money, not as flexible as money, but at least mas may income siya, pero almost close to money. So that when you sell the securities that you have, mababawi mo yung pera mo. Okay? Ang problema na lang doon yung pricing. So, when you want to be liquid as a corporation, halimbawa, or as an individual, you have money, what you want to have is, ayaw mo ng, ayaw mo mag-deposit na sa bangko kasi maliit ang kita, gusto mo malaki ang kita. Saan mo gagamitin? Saan mo siya gagamitin? Maybe you can buy securities. No? You can buy securities para as near cash as possible. Pwede mo siya ngayon maibenta. Okay? Then demand for cash in society can affect borrowing rates. Itong susi ngayon diyan, okay? If you notice, nagbabago ang interest rates ng mga bangko. Why? Kasi nagbabago ang panahon. Nagbabago ang panahon. Pag nagbago ang panahon, nagbabago din yung interest rates na sinisingil ng bangko o binibigay ng bangko. So ang income natin, dahil nagbabago ang interest rates, hindi magagaranti through the interest that we receive sa fixed income securities. I will demonstrate that in a while. I will show that in a while. So bond liquidity provides cash in times of need, and actual values of the bonds depends on prevailing interest rates and time of purchase and closeness to maturity. Hirap, ano? Ulitin natin, ha? Ang pag-turn ng bonds into cash, yung pag-convert mo from bonds, hawak mo yung bonds, bumili ka nilabas mo pera mo, bumili ka ng bonds. Okay? Kailangan mo ng pera ngayon, kailangan ibalik mo sa cash ang bonds mo. Ano ang mag-i-impact doon sa pera mo? It depends on prevailing interest rates and kailan mo binili o kailan mo binenta. Okay? At kailan mo binili. At gaano siya kalapit sa maturity. In other words, meron bang 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 10 years? Ano ang value nun? Depende kasi mas malayo ang maturity niya, mas unpredictable kung ano ang magiging final na interest rate mo. Okay? Now, here is an example that I would like to show. Paano mo binibigyan ng value ang fixed income security? So example 1 natin, okay? Supposing nag-issue ka ng 10-year bond. No, ang bond na yon merong 8% na coupon rate. Ang ibig sabihin ng 8% na coupon rate, nangako siya na magbabayad siya ng 8% interest per annum. Pero at that time na kinuha mo yon, at that time binili mo yung income security na yan, yung ano mo, yung bond mo na yan, ang BSP rate or yung sinisingil ng BSP sa mga bangko, sa mga nangungutang sa Bangko Sentral natin is 6.25% per annum. Okay? So, dalawang interest rate na nakikita natin dito, yung policy rate which is imposed by the BSP, and the second is the coupon rate which is sinisingil ng lender. Okay? Based on the bond. Ano mangyayari sa transaction? Let me show you. So year 0, binili mo yung bond, nilabas mo yung 100,000 pesos. Assume natin 100,000 na nilabas mo. Year 1, okay, dahil sabi 8% ang coupon rate, year 1, you earned 8,000 in interest out of your 100,000. Income mo na yon 8,000. Kaya lang, ito ngayon, dahil lumipas na ang isang taon, yung pera naman na nilabas mo, kung nandun yun sa kung nilabas mo yun sa BSP, dapat kumita na rin yun ng 6.25%. So kinukompute natin ano ang value niya sa perang 8,000 na yan. Kung i-reckon mo siya, i-base mo siya sa from the time that you borrowed. So nag-borrow ka at year 0. Kung sana ang 8,000 na yon, the same value as year 0, it's sana 8,000 maliwanag ang kita mo. Pero it's not. Tumakbo na rin ng isang taon. At meron na siyang penalty kasi ang dapat na kahalaga ng pera na yon, kung meron kang 7,529.41 na pera na ininvest mo sa year 0, sana yun ay nagiging 8,000 na sa year 1. Yun ang ibig sabihin ng policy, yung policy rate yan. Kung kaya may policy rate, kaya sinatawag natin present value today. Yung present value natin today is, the value today is only 7,529.41. Hindi siya talaga 8,000. So 100,000 natin kumita ng 7,529.41 based on present value. Year 2, 8,000 ulit yung kinita, pero ang present value is only 7,086.51. Year 3, 8,000 ulit, ang present value is only 6,669.68. Bakit palit ng palit? Kasi 3 taon nang lumipas eh. 3 taon na siya na merong impact ang policy rate na 6.25%. Palit ng palit. In other words, if you had 6,669.65 in year 0, in year 1 it would be worth already hindi siya 7,529. Ang 6,669.65 kung year 0 mo siya pinasok based on the 6.25% per annum na interest rate ng policy rate, it would already have been worth 8,000 today, year 3. So year 4, ganun din. Year 5, year 6, year 7, year 8, year 9. Pag year 10, siningil mo na yung 100,000 mo. Okay, so ang balik sa'yo, 100,000 plus another 8,000 in interest sa 100,000 yun. Okay? Ang total na value ng pera na yun na 100,000 plus yung 8,000, 108,000, ang actual na present value niya kasi 10 years na lumipas is actually only 58,902.59. In other words, kung nag-invest ka ng 58,902.59 at year 0 at doon sa nilagay mo sa doon mo sila sa nilagay sa BSP at 6.25% per annum, it would still have been 100,000. Umabot yan. So the value there is 58,902.59. Okay? What does that mean? It means that out of the total cash paid out mo na 100,000 in year 0, ang total na bumalik sa iyo na cash at the same year zero value is only 106,451.64. Okay? Yun lang yun. So, ito ngayon ang impact niyan. Maganda bang kita? Akala mo malaki kasi 8,000 na kinikita mo sa interest rate mo per annum. Pero dahil sa policy rate, dahil sa penalty ng BSP na yan, ang actual mo actually na value the same year na year zero value is 106,451.64. So it's really only a 6.4% return on that on the 100,000 that you have based on value at year zero. So doon ngayon ang nagkakaroon ng idea kung paano mag-transaction. So hindi pa lang ibig sabihin na pag 100,000 ka magdodoble, maraming lalaki ang value ng pera mo. Not that much in terms of current values. Okay? So let's take a second example. What if the same bond, but on year 1, bumaba yung interest rate to 5.75% per annum lang. And by year 2, onwards, hanggang mag-mature siya to 5.25%. Okay? Let's take a look. So, transactions, year 0, you buy 100,000 in bond. Year 1 is 8,000 interest mo. Ang present value mo is the same as only is the same yan, kasi 1 year tumakbo na yon, no? 1 year tumakbo, still paying at 6.75. Ang total na ang actual value is only 7,565.01. But year 2 nag-apply na yung drop ng interest rate. Kasi ang policy drop ng BSP from 6.25 to 5.25, dalawang tinatawag nilang drops yan na tag 0.25, 25 basis points. 0.25. So, mababasa niyo sa mga news yan, may mga basis points na bumagsak yung BSP rate. Is that good or bad? Well, para sa mga investor, pag bumagsak na ganun ang interest rate, good news yun. Bakit? Kasi, na binili mo yung 100,000, ang pangako sa iyo na ang interest rate mo is 8%. Pero meron kang penalty na 6.25%. So ang total lang talaga ang neto lang talaga doon is 1.75%. However, dito sa pangalawang example, lumaki ang iyong gap, nadagdagan ng 0.5. So instead of only 1.75, nagiging 2.25% na. So mas malaki na ngayon. Ang total value mo ngayon, ang present value mo, mas malaki na. And again, sa year 3, nagiging 5.25, so bumaba ulit, mas malaki pa ngayon. So it's not only 2.25, but actually 2 point, total of 2. Okay? Total of 2 na talaga ang gap mo. So ang value mo, titingnan natin, pagdating ng maturity, you receive back 100,000 plus your 8,000 na earnings. Total value mo of bumalik sa iyo is now not just 50 plus thousand, but 64,000. So kumita ka na mas malaki. Pag kino-compare natin, total cash received is no longer just 106,000 but 120,408.30. Mas maganda na ngayon ang return mo because interest rate drop. Kasi dito sinasabi natin na yung interest rate na prevailing at the time that you buy or sell affects your total value na pwede mo ibenta, pwede mong gamitin. Pwede mong ibenta yan? Yes, pwede mong gamitin yan. Example 3. Okay? Same scenario, same drops, pero pagdating ng year 5, binenta mo na. You didn't want to hold it sa maturity. Okay? So what happens? Titingnan natin dito, parehong takbo niyan hanggang pagdating ng year 5. The remaining value na hindi mo pa nakolekta, yung 100,000 na face amount, plus yung 8,000 per year na interest hanggang year 10. Hanggang year 10. Ang total value na redeemable pa dyan is 77,060. Okay? So yun ang, kung gusto mong ibenta, dapat wag mong ibenta at less than 77,060.39. Pwede kayong magkasundo sa buyer mo na sige, ako bibili ng 77,060. Bakit? Kasi pwede sa tingin niya, babagsak palalo ang interest rate after year 5. Halimbawa, bumagsak pa yan sa 4.75 interest ang policy rate. Mas lalaki ang kita niya, hindi lang 77,000 ang kikitain niya, kundi mas malaki kaysa 77,000. Yun ang risk ng buyer. Ikaw, risk mo as a seller na pag 77,060 ang binenta mo siya, you are saying na hanggang 5.25% na yung policy rate, hindi na babagsak. E paano pag bumagsak? E di yung additional pa dapat na kinita mo, hindi mo nakikitain kasi napunta na doon sa buyer mo. And this is how the secondary market sa fixed income securities happen when you know the valuation of that. So total cash paid out is 100,000. Total cash received years 1 to 4, present value is 28,020, 70.28. Total cash received if sold at start of year 5, so binenta mo sa 77,000 plus the 28, you have 105,130.65, which is smaller compared to yung previous na sale. Balikan natin ha. 105 dito is 120,000. Okay? So in other words, kung tama yung pagkatingin ng buyer mo sa iyo, nababagsak palalo ang policy rate up to year 10, mas malaki ang kikita niya sa iyo, hindi lang 77,000 ang babalik sa kanya, but actually greater than that. So kikitain siya. Ang problema diyan is that itong illustration na ito, okay? Ang illustration na ito presumes that you have a good knowledge about the economy, whether the economy will enable interest rates to go down or to go up. Okay? You have to look at different factors to find out kung pwede siya o hindi. And after all of that, para sa akin, medyo maliit yung kinikita dyan. Pero if we review what happened there sa fixed income securities, ito yung mga nakaka-apekto sa income mo from fixed income securities. The policy rate, the inflation rate, because bakit ang inflation rate? Kasi pag mataas ang inflation, ang ginagawa ng BSP, tataasan din yung policy rate para makontrol ang inflation. As is happening today, ganun ang ginagawa ng ating central bank, mataas ang inflation. So, ang Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas, tinataas yung policy rate. Okay? So, an inflation rate is dictated by supply and demand of basic goods like rice, like fuel, diesel, gasolina, electricity. Lahat yan, mga basic yan. Tubig. Lahat yan, apektado. So kung mahal ang gasolina, tataas ang inflation. Tataas kasi ang pag-transport ng goods, tataas ang pag-produce ng goods, tataas ang farming cost, tataas lahat yan. All of that depends on supply and demand. If the supply of these basic commodities is less than the demand, bababa yung presyo. Pero pag mataas yung demand, parami ang population natin, mas maraming kailangan, pero ang supply kakaunti, tataas ang presyo. You remember what happened to the garlic? No? Naging mahal ang garlic. And many times, pati ibang vegetable supply dyan, tumaas masyado. Okay? The second is that there is economic stability. Dapat, the inflation rate is affected by economic stability. Kung masyadong manipis ang margin for error ng gobyerno, there is a great possibility na hindi mamimit ang targets sa economic growth. Nagkakaroon ng instability. And what happens is that people who would like to put up businesses in the country may not put up businesses anymore kasi hindi na stable na economy. It cannot support the business. So they would rather take their money elsewhere. I think essentially for the Philippines, unfortunately, that has happened since the last 6-7 years. Mga 7 years na siyang ganun. may perception that there is great economic instability in the Philippines that is due especially to the local political situation. So that instability contributes to the political situation that shakes up the economic, the trust of the people in how the economy is going to run. Pag sinabi mong geopolitical, global yan. At alam niyo naman ang nangyari since February 24, 2022. Nagkaroon ng away, in-invade ng Russia ang Ukraine, and nagkaroon ng instability sa supply ng oil. Kung kaya tumaas ang presyo ng oil natin dito sa Pilipinas. Until things medyo stabilize towards the latter part of 2022. Kung kaya ngayon unti-unti bumababa pa lang ang presyo. Pero if you remember before that happened, panahon ni Pinoy, ang ating mga gas bumaba na sa mga 30 pesos per liter. So if it can be done before, sana pwede magawa pa rin as the economy progresses and as technology gets better. The third factor is tenor or maturity. 1 year pa yan mag-mature, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 30, 20 years, 25 years, 30 years. Imagine 30 years from now, can you still predict what the interest rate is going to be? It's a big risk. How about 20 years? Still a big risk. What is predictable? Predictable is the next 5 years or maybe up to the maximum of 10 years. Predictable so that the financial advisors of or the financial advice, or not the financial advice, not the financial experts at BSP will record based on the data saan papunta tayo. Will interest rates be higher or lower 5 years, 10 years from now? We depend on their analysis. But it's also good to have your own source. And if you believe your source, maybe you can predict what the interest rates are going to be. And that is due to the impact of maturity. Kung kailan magmamature yung bonds mo. Okay? Doon pa lang mabubuo ano talaga makukuha mo. And of course, supply and demand of the bonds themselves. Hindi yung supply and demand of basic goods, kundi supply and demand of the securities. Kung gusto ng tao yung security, they will pay a higher price to buy it. Pag ayaw ng tao, they will not want it. Mababa ang presyo ng security na yon. So all of this impact on the value of the securities that you hold. And these are very fluid every time, every year. And then there's of course the factor of yung ang mga investors around the world, they know their stuff and they look at what is happening in the country and they give a grade to the country kung anong klaseng gaano ka-strong ang security na ino-offer natin. And since itong panahon pa ito na I think panahon pa ni Gloria Arroyo, nagkaroon tayo ng investment grade ranking ng ating securities. Hopefully hindi tayo masyadong bumaba due to the difficult times ahead. But we will discuss in a while what are there for us para hindi na bumaba yon. Okay? Now, if you look at this, nakikita niyo yung orange part ng chart na yon. Yun yung ang policy rate ng BSP. At ang inflation, yung gray. So you notice na ang policy rate ng BSP, sumusunod yan sa inflation. Okay? Sumusunod sa inflation. We were already going down. Binababa na ng BSP ang rates way back ng 2019, up to 2020. Nang dumating ang COVID, doon tayo din nadali. Okay? Doon tayo nadali. Tumaas ang inflation, kaya ang BSP sumagot ng pagtaas naman ng policy rate. Tiniis muna ng BSP for a while, hindi muna siya nagtaas kahit na tumaas ng inflation. Tiniis muna ng BSP, hindi muna tinaas ang policy rate. Pero eventually they had to raise it kasi masyado nang mahirap i-control ang inflation natin. Kung masyado na mahirap i-control ang inflation, malulugi lang ang lahat. Okay? Kailangan tamang-tama lang, there should be enough growth. So, the conclusion that we have here is this. If you buy fixed income securities when inflation tends to go down, you will most likely gain value in the months and years ahead. Okay? If the inflation tends to go down, okay, most likely gain values in the months and years ahead. The opposite happens. Conversely, you will most likely lose value in the months and years ahead if you invest in fixed income securities when inflation is still rising. So it's very important that we understand right now, saan ba tayong sitwasyon? Is it going down or is it rising? Important yan. We will look at that in a while. Okay? Return on investment tends to be small to moderate when you invest in fixed income securities. Nakita nyo naman, no? Kasi ganun talaga. Pero there will always be value. Kaya lang, will you gain or will you lose? Depende. Tapos pag nag-gain ka pa, hindi naman masyado ganun kalaki. Okay? So, there are opportunities for gain by buying or selling before the bond or the notes or the bills mature. But you have to know how to read the direction of the economy in order to make a wise decision. Okay? At this point, is there anyone na ano pa would like to ask a question? Kasi I don't want to move on muna to equities kung kasi ang equities medyo actually simpler ang equities than the fixed income securities. Or you can reserve your question later. Okay? Important thing is nakuha nyo na yung conclusion. Now let's talk about equities. What are equities? Equities is part ownership in a business. Okay, hindi siya utang, capital. Tayo ang nagbibigay ng capital sa negosyo. So, wala siyang maturity date. So long as hawak mo yan, you are part owner of the business. Okay? Earnings come from proportionate share of the company's earnings. So ano man ang kinikita, depending on the number of shares, na tawag natin na equities, okay? Depending on the number of shares, you get also a proportionate share per share. Bawat share merong earnings. So depending on the number of shares, multiply mo lang yan, those are your total income, okay? The value of the shares of stock is commensurate to the stream of earnings the company could earn in the coming years. So ito ngayon ang question dyan. Magkano mo bibilhin ang equities? Pag sinabi ng market na ganito ang price ng bawat share nitong kumpanya, do you buy at that share? Do you buy more or do you buy at less? Ito ngayon ang pinaka-issue dyan na dapat maintindihan natin kung paano nangyayari. And the value of those shares really is commensurate to the stream of earnings the company could earn in the coming years. So, pinu-forecast mo yan. Pinu-forecast mo magkano earnings niyan. Okay? The share owner can sell to third-party buyer for profit or cash flow. Okay? Dahil pwede siyang ibenta kung kailan mo ng pera, may hawak ka na equities, may hawak ka na share, pwede mo siyang ibenta para may cash ka. Madali itong ibenta kasi usually available yung shares for buy and sell. Okay. Anong kinds na meron? Essentially, these are only private. So these are public or exchange traded. In other words, the shares are listed in a stock exchange. At doon ka sa stock exchange nagtatransact para makabili o makabenta ng shares mo. And then the second type is private or limited ownership. In other words, hindi siya nakalista sa stock exchange, pero pwede kang magiging may-ari by having your private transaction to buy shares of that company. Okay? The purpose, saan ka ba nagre-raise ng capital? Of course, you raise capital in order to provide funds to start a business, or you use that money to capitalize on the expansion of business operations. Okay? Sometimes it's also used to pay debts. Pero yung mga utang na yon, kino-convert mo into equities. So pwedeng may kautangan ng isang company to another company, pero imbis na utang, sasabihin ng pinag-utangan niya, sige, gawin nyo na lang kami part owner ng business. So nagiging equity yung utang. Okay? That's essentially just to provide funding. Marketability. Because equities can be bought or sold, they also provide liquidity. In other words, hindi siya mahirap, di ka mahirapan sa perang, gawin mo siyang cash, no? Yung yung securities mo to make it cash, you can buy and sell easily. The income stream from the business also provides liquidity. So long as hinahagawakan mo yung equities na yon, pag nag-declare na ng dividendo ang business, you can get a share of that dividendo based on the declaration. The present value of this income stream na galing doon sa dividendo mo based on the prevailing risk-weight interest rates help determine its actual buy and sell value of the shares. Okay, may present value din siya, pero doon sa forecast mo yon, kung magkano kikitain ng business para mabigyan mo siya ng tunay na value based on current times. Okay? The basic rule is, the higher the forecast income stream, the higher the value of the equities. So it makes sense pag mag-invest ka sa negosyo na kumikita. Huwag kang mag-invest sa negosyo na hindi pagkikita. O kung hindi man siya kumikita ngayon, may potential na malaki ang kikitain niya in the future. So kita talaga ang tinitingnan mo dito. Kaya ka nag-i-invest because you want to earn also from the investment. So kung may kita siya, kikita ka rin. Okay? So let us now look at how we value equities. Okay? Try to follow me. Okay? Try to follow me. A listed company, in other words, mabibili mo ang shares sa stock exchange. A listed company earns 1 million in 2022. Last year. Itong year, nagfo-forecast siya that it will grow 10% every year for the next 5 years. 5 years lang, bakit hindi masobra? Kasi medyo malabo na yung sobra dyan. Malabo na yung sobra dyan, mahirap mag-predict dyan. So, hanggang 5 years. Now, if you were an investor, what you would do is you would look at only the 5 years because in all practicality, that's probably what is only feasible for you to forecast. Okay? Practically, yun lang ang po pwede. Beyond that, medyo malabo pa. We don't know what other things will turn up in the geopolitical economic environment. So, titingnan natin. Okay? Now, cost of money is 8% per annum. Hindi lang BSP ha. Hindi BSP rate yan. Kundi yung cost to do business. In other words, kung manghihiram ng kapital ang company, babayaran niya yung kapital na hiniram niya by 8%. So in other words, ang gusto niya mas malaki ang kita niya, ang company dapat 10% na yung halimbawa, kung ikaw investor ay 10% na kita mo para kahit hiniram mo yung 8%, meron ka pa rin natitirang kita. Okay, so total number of shares is 1,000. In other words, the current value of each share today, ano yan tawag mo doon, yung basta ano yan, yung as valued talaga ngayon is 1,000 pesos per share. So 1,000 per share times 1,000 shares is 1 million. So year 0 earns 1 million. Yun yung existing data, 1 million. Ang forecast niya year 1 can earn 1,100,000 kasi 10% ang growth. However, the present value is only 1,018,518.52. Bakit? Kasi ang cost of money is 8%. 8%. Okay? Year 2, 1.2 million na ang kikitain niya. Pero ang value niya, present value is only 137. 1,037,000. Year 3, 1,331, present value 1.056. Year 4, current ang earning 1.464, pero actual present value niya is 1.076. Year 5 can earn 1.6 million, pero ang present value niya is 1.96. Okay? Total projected present value over 5 years. I-total mo lahat ng present value niya mulang year 1 hanggang year 5 amounts to 5,284,642.45 for 1,000 shares. Okay? I-divide natin yan ngayon. Okay? So PB per share, present value per share is 5,284.64. So ito ngayon ang advice. You can buy the shares at this price with the hope that you at least get your money back. If growth is more than 10%, you win. Panalo ka. Okay? Kasi imbes na bumalik sa iyo at 10% ang pera mo, mas malaki ang income mo. So the more income you would have now, right now, if you look at different companies like BDO, like mga SM na gano, like San Miguel, ang kanilang income per year is 17%. 17%, but ikaw ang buyer, so magano ka ngayon, mag-haggle ka ngayon. Magano kayo, mag-negotiate ka with the buyer or the seller. Magkano talaga ang presyong pagkakasunduan nyo. Then you meet somewhere in the middle kung saan it is pleasing to you, and that is already the transaction price. So, kung both kayo happy, kasi pwedeng sabihin mo, 5 years kailangan ko na yung pera ko pero maghanap ako ng ibang investment na para mas malaki ang kita. Kailangan ko yung cash after 5 years. Pwede naman ganun ang dahilan mo eh. So whatever your reason is for selling at 5 years, for negotiating a price, daan mo yan, pero at least makikita mo kung bakit ka pumasok. Ito, alam mo na pag nabili mo yung price is 5,284.64, at least kumikita ka ng 10% per annum doon sa actual value ng ano mo, ng investment mo. Okay? Now, kung if matalo ka, if growth is more than 10%, then you win. If less, paano ka babawi? Well, one way you could do that is you wait a little bit longer para yung income na for the next year or the next 2 years, makabawi ang investment mo. Okay? Or you can sell the shares already for whatever it is. Okay? Mabawi ka dyan. Then, lipat mo sa iba. Pwede mangyaring ganun. Why is understanding this important? Because you have to realize that this is what you need to understand and know if you want to invest in equities. You want to buy shares of a company, you have to understand this. Pwede namang magawa na mag-follow ka lang sa ginagawa ng iba. Pero pag ikaw mismo hindi mo naintindihan ito, baka magugulat ka. Malaking pagkagulat ang mangyari sa iyo kasi hindi mo naintindihan ang pinasok mo. Okay? It's the same thinking kung bakit ako, halimbawa, I don't invest in pinakabagong investment craze ngayon, yung cryptocurrencies. Okay? I asked siguro mga 20 na katao, sabi ko, how do you make money on cryptocurrencies? They would only tell me, you make money by trading. Sabi ko, trading presumes na merong real value ang nabili mo o na binibenta mo na cryptocurrency. So, paano nagkakaroon ng real value? They don't know. So, if they cannot explain, delikado. Okay? Ang perception ko dyan is madaling gamitin ang cryptocurrency ng mga illegal transactions. Kasi walang regulation yan eh. Walang regulation. Kaya yun, pinapasukan ng mga illegal na transactions. Do you want to do that? I would not. Okay? So factors that happen that affect the price of your equities, first of all, are interest rates. You saw the effect of that. Yung present value mo affected. The inflation rate, of course, affects interest rates. At alam natin, ang inflation rate is also a function of supply and demand of basic goods, economic stability, and the political situation. And then, gross domestic product. Pag nag-expand ang gross domestic product, ang companies normally, by not doing much, will continue to grow in their income. Parami ng parami eh. Kasi ang gross domestic product is a function of how much growth is there in business transactions and everything. So kung lumalaki ang business transactions, kikita din yung company, kasama siya doon, sumasakay siya. And again, supply and demand of the equities yun. Kung available yung shares na gusto mo bilhin, kung gusto mong ibenta, meron ba? The state of the industry that you are invested in, iba-iba yan. Kasi ang daming industries na nandyan sa stock exchange. So saan ka mag-invest? Sa mga developers, sa mga tech companies, sa mga medical institutions, sa mga financial institutions, sa mga manufacturing companies, sa mining companies, sa mga tourism-oriented companies. Depende. Kung marunong ka mag-analyze you can pick the industry that will give you the best returns. And of course, you have to know company performance kasi kahit na magandang takbo na economy, kumikita yung ibang company, pag bulok yung iyong management, you could still lose money. So titingnan mo yun, maasahan ba yung management ng company. And that is where management savvy is something that you have to look at. How good a manager are they? Are they really being able to perform as well as they could? When they say 10% ipapromise namin sa iyo na return na income, can they deliver on the 10%? So titingnan mo yung history nila. And of course, ang katumbas diyan is kailan mo ba kailangan ang pera mo pag nag-invest ka? Nakita nyo kanina, na minimum niya na maganda is 5 years. Okay? Pero para sa possibility na you earn less, kailangan habaan mo maybe 10 years. Are we doing that? Are you able to do that? Kaya mo bang pahabaan na ibalik yung pera mo only after 10 years? Para sa akin, a safe mindset that you need to have is that hindi ko kailangan ng pera, hindi ko gagalawin, hindi ko gagamitin in the next 10 years. Pabayaan ko lang siya for the next 10 years para sigurado. Okay? Why? Because historically, equities always rise. May bagsak yun na year, pero babawi din siya after that. Lagi siyang bumabawi. Bakit? Kasi yun ang natural growth ng economy around the world. Dumarami ang mga tao, dumarami ang supply and demand of basic goods. Inflation will continue to rise for countries that are continuously growing. So interest rate, kailangan para to promote growth, what will happen is that BSPs will try to control inflation rate. So there is always room for good management, kikita talaga yung pera niyo. Okay? So, tingnan natin ngayon, what are the things that contribute to positive factors sa Pilipinas? Okay? Our basic economic fundamental. The first there is our GDP sa Pilipinas continue to be at a very high pace of around 5 to 7% per annum versus only 1.2 to 2% per annum for developed economies. So kung ikaw may pera at magandang takbo ng negosyo sa Pilipinas, nalaman mo kung ano nangyari sa Pilipinas, saan mo gusto maglagay ng pera? Doon sa 1 to 2% lang or dito sa 5 to 7%? Diba dito the logic says dito ka pupunta. So what will happen is they will buy shares. When they buy shares, what happen is that tataas ang presyo ng shares kasi the demand is up. Okay? The second factor, we are a consumer-driven economy. 74.5% of our GDP comes from our own people spending their money for personal needs. Statistical truth yan. 74.5%. In other words, hindi natin kailangan mag-import, export, kasi nandito mismo sa atin tumatakbo na ekonomiya dahil sa pangangailangan natin. If you just notice, bilangan nyo ang number of malls that we have in the Philippines. Sobrang dami. Kaya namamangha yung mga foreigners when they come to the Philippines, sobrang dami ng malls natin. Pangatlong factor, okay? Our principal exports, dati ginagawa ng mga Chinese, kung ano ginagawa natin sa Pilipinas, sa China, ginagaya lang nila sa Pilipinas, tapos presyo nila na mas mura. Ngayon, for the last almost 20, more than 20 years na siguro, ang ating export, hindi goods, OFW at mga BPO. So ang OFWs remitted 34.9 billion and the BPOs earned 29.5 billion in 2020. Ayan, 2021 alone. 2021, mali naman yan. Nawala yung 1. 2021 alone. Okay? Ang laki noon and they continue to grow. Okay? So ito pala makikita mo na yung factor na malaking bagay. And huge infrastructure and utilities needs guarantee massive inflows of investment money in job creation. Kaya gustong-gusto ng gustong-gusto ng Pacific, Metro Pacific tsaka San Miguel, yung gumawa ng mga highways. Kasi hindi ang gobyerno kumukolekta ng taxes diyan. Sila kumukolekta ng tolls. Tapos magbabayad na lang sa gobyerno ng franchise fee. Mas mura yun sa kanila, malaki ang kita, cash cow talaga sa kanila ang highways na yan. Okay? And there are many more, mga bridges na ginagawa, mga bagong airports na ginagawa. And for 2023 alone, 194 projects were approved by NEDA. 128 of them new. Ano lang, yung difference ay 60, ano yan, 60, 60, oh, 60, hindi 60, no, 128, so, ano ba yan, at 366. 66 of them are ongoing projects. Pero 128 are new. Kasama diyan. Ang subway hindi natin nararamdaman pero nandiyan na yung subway, ginagawa na, malapit na matapos. Okay, hindi natin nakikita but it's there. Massive lahat yun. Bilyones yun. The middle class is growing vigorously, spending money. Okay. Punta ka sa mall, tingnan mo lang doon. Okay. Kahit naman lang kakain sa ano para mag-enjoy na sarili sa mall, nandun ang mga pamilya. We have a young population, 25.3 years old on the average. At tumatanda siya dahan-dahan. Ano significance ito? Kasi para kang merong empleyado. Ang edad ng empleyado mo ngayon, 25 years old pa lang. So ang kanyang sweldo sa iyo, ano pa lang? Mura pa lang kasi starting pa lang siya. Eh, pag nag-manager na yung tataas na yun, ay sa ibang bansa, matatanda na, kaya mahal na ang binabayad nila for their own output sa production. Tayo, mura pa lang because we have a very young population. Ang ating tourism, noong 2019 when I last conducted this seminar, starting to boom pa lang 2019, naudlot ng COVID 2021-22. Tapos sinabi, revenge tourism ngayon. Sobrang dami ngayon ang nababiyahe. More than what we had before the pandemic. Totoo yan. Tingnan nyo ang nangyari. Okay? Ito ang statistics ng 2020. Value of tourism spending in Asia-Pacific region in 2020. Sa lagay na yon, COVID times pa yun 2020. Ang nakikita nyo sa listahan dyan, pang-5 na ang Pilipinas kung saan ang ginastos sa pagbiyahe sa tourism is 32.88 billion. Okay? $32.88 billion. Naungusan natin ang Thailand, na yung Thailand ang nagbibisita sa Thailand is already about 20 million every year. Tayo, nandun pa lang, hindi pa tayo nakaka 10 million sa first half of the year. So, less pa tayo. So, naungusan natin. Bakit? Kasi mas maganda ang Pilipinas. Okay? Mas marami talagang puntahan dito sa Pilipinas. And you notice that when you visit the major tourist destinations in the Philippines. Okay? And if you look at the evaluation by World Bank yata ito. Okay, basta developed by the Center for Economics and Business Research. So World Economics ito. It says that the Philippines will be the 22nd largest economy by 2035. Tingnan niyo yan. Okay? Marami tayong naungusan. We were only number 32. We were only number 32 in 2020, but by 2035, we are forecast to be already at number 22. Okay? Ang mas nauna lang sa atin, mas mabilis, hindi ko alam kung anong ginagawa nilang tama, okay, is Vietnam. Maybe it's because of the geopolitical situation. They were only 37 as of 2020, but by 2035, they would be number 19. But all of these are good signs for us to invest in the Philippines. So let's take a look at what has been happening lately. Okay? Di ba sabi natin, titingnan natin ang interest rate ng mga bonds natin. If the policy rate goes up, bababa ang value ng bonds natin. So pag tinignan natin ang nangyayari sa Pilipinas in 2023 so far, interest rates have more or less been level. Konti lang inakyat. And if we're going to look forward to the future, mukhang bababa ang interest rates. Mukhang bababa yung policy rates natin. Okay? However, ito lang ang ingat dyan because inflation is still very high. We don't, hindi masolve na so far na pagtaas ng interest, hindi pa nasosolve yung inflation. Pero there's a big chance na bababa ito ang inflation. So going forward, it looks like it will ease. Kasi ang inflation was lower at 5.4% from May's 6.6%. Core inflation also eased but at a slower pace. BSP lowered inflation forecast at 5.4 for 2023 from 6.6% in May to 5.4 overall for the year, which is a good sign. Slower inflation is also driven by declining transport costs kasi pamura na yung pamura na rin yung electricity, pamura na rin yung yung gas and gasoline and diesel, and more people are now starting to buy hybrid cars. Okay, sa future up and coming pa na develop na ng Toyota ang hydrogen powered cars. So medyo going towards the future, it looks like inflation is going to be tame. So kung gagawa ka ng at BSP din nag-cost na rin ng rate hike niya. So tinitingnan natin ganito. Okay? By dito tayo ng third quarter of 2023, attractive yields will entice investors to return to the bond market. Attractive yields mean to say, hindi dahil sa tataas ang yield, babagsak ang yield. Pag bumagsak ang yield, tumataas ang value ng bonds. So many of them will look towards buying now, hoping that the future will bear out their decision to buy now. So papasok sila. So tayo din, most likely ganun din ma-experience natin. So babagsak yan. Inflation likely to fall within 2 to 4% BSP target range by the fourth quarter of 2023. Okay? And by 2024, more aggressive start of the year positioning. So bababa lalo ang policy rates by that time. And by the second quarter of 2024, BSP is likely to cut interest rates already by that time. So going forward, it looks like gaganda ang scenario para sa mga holders ng fixed income securities. Let's take a look at the equities market. Ito naman, we were supposed to have a recession because of nauubos na yung pera ng tao magmula ng 2020 hanggang 22. Pero napopospone kasi bumabawi ang ekonomiya. Okay? Factors that supported the stronger economic growth in first half, a significant easing in financial conditions, yung interest rate nga, continued drawdown of excess savings. Apparently, marami sa may pera ang ginamit ang pera sa panggastos ng 2020 up to 2022. Pero ngayon paubos na. So ngayon, kailangan magtrabaho ulit. Kailangan mag-produce ulit para bumalik ulit ang pera. And then 3, rotation of spending from goods to services. Okay? Hindi na goods, services nang dumarami ngayon. Okay? Dati, mauso ang maraming bilihan. Lazada, Shopee, and all of that. Pero as nag-o-open ng economy, mas marami ng pangangailangan yung services. Okay? Nagsishift na doon ang pera. So, ang factors na to will dissipate. No? Mawawala na sila as the effects of the monetary tightening filter through. Okay? And the savings buffer that consumers have accumulated is run down. So, mawawala na ito. They will be, wala na pang gastos, so wala nang inflation. Kukula na yung bababa na inflation kasi wala nang gastos ang Pilipino. Okay? If you look at the stock market, ito ngayon ang sinasabi ng stock market natin. Ongoing, by the second quarter of 2023, inflation slowed down to 5.4% in June. BSP pauses rate hike. Corporate earnings are up 17% year on year nung first quarter. Di ba sabi natin kanina, yung epekto ng 10% pwede na ganun. Pero ngayon 17%, ibig sabihin pag pumasok ka sa equities ngayon, gaganda. There's a wage hike of 40 pesos during the first quarter na pupunta doon sa more consumerism siguro and more money for people to spend. So tataas yung noon. Now, if you're familiar, ang mga shares of stocks sa Philippines na nakalista ay nandun sa Philippine Stock Exchange. Meron ng Philippine Stock Exchange ng 30 different companies na nilagay nila sa tinatawag na PSEI, Philippine Stock Exchange Index. Ang index nito, may proportionate din yan ng value ng bawat isa. So ito ang ginagamit ng PSE para i-monitor at i-track ang takbo ng values ng mga shares of stock sa Philippine Stock Exchange. Okay? Sinusundan natin yan. So if you are going to invest, ang pinaka-logic dyan, kung wala kang alam kung paano mag-invest, a good idea is to invest in the 30 stocks na nakalista sa Stock Exchange Index. Kasi ito, pinili na ng kumpanya, ng PSE, para magiging modelo na susundan. So if you're invested in the Stock Exchange Index stocks, most likely, maganda kung anong performance ng Stock Exchange, yun din ang magiging performance ng investments mo. Okay? However, I would like to point out that just like in any listing, merong outstanding at merong hindi outstanding or laggard. Okay? In this case, halimbawa, BDO is outstanding. Imbis na only 17% ang kinikita niya, ang kinikita ng BDO is 50%. Okay? 7.7% na sa PSI magmula ng 1 year ago. 1 year ago. 50% growth from 1 year ago ang share price ng BDO. Compared to PSI, only 7.7% plus. On the other hand, kasama din sa index ang Monde. Okay? Ang Monde nagbebenta ng ano yan, Nissin Ramen. Oh, yan, Lucky Me. Oh, Lucky Me pala, hindi Nissin Ramen. Yan. So nagbebenta ng Lucky Me, ganda ng ano to, kaya nandiyan sa index kasi magandang performance natin. Pero imbis na 7.7% ang kinita magbulang June, bumaba siya sa 39%. Bakit? Eh siguro yung mga tao nagsawa ng ng Lucky Me, kakakain ng Lucky Me during the pandemic. Kaya ngayon, yung tunay na pagkain na kaya bumaba yung benta nila. Okay? May factors na ganun. Nakita dapat ng Monde ito para maiwasan yung ganung mangyayari. Kung ako nandun sa kumpanya, I would probably look at it and say, let's get ready for the time na hindi nakakain ng pansit ang mga Pilipino, yung Lucky Me na bigla. Kakain na lang sila ng normal na pagkain. Pagkain ng normal na pagkain, babagsak yung benta natin. Kaya magawa tayo ng pagkain na para doon sa normal na kainan nila. Hindi yata nagawa. Okay? So, going forward, may challenges pa tayo sa mga food manufacturing kasi nandun ang El Nino. Apektado ang bentahan ng rice, ng paggawa ng pag-produce ng rice, pag-produce ng fish, ng sugar, tsaka power supply natin. Di ba napansin nyo, madalas na tayo nagkaka-brown out ngayon kasi nagkukulang ang power dahil sa El Nino nangyayari yan. So, even El Nino can affect our situation. Also, sa supply and demand of shares of stock nandun sa PSEI. For the past 5 years, ang pera na naka-invest sa Pilipinas, ini-invest ng mga foreigners. Unti-unti nilang nilalabas at nililipat sa ibang bansa. Okay? Mas malaki ang nilabas nilang pera kaysa pinasok nila. That means to say, mas maraming shares of stock available sa PSE ngayon kaysa dati. So following the law of supply and demand, marami kang supply, less demand, mas babagsak ang presyo ng shares of stock mo. Now, ngayon, medyo paakyat din kasi unti-unti na silang bumabalik. Nakikita na nila uli eh. So ito ngayon titingnan natin. The opportunities dyan sa equities natin is that mura ang presyo ng shares of stock ngayon. Mura pa. Okay? May opportunity dahil mura pa na pag binili natin ngayon, there's a big chance na magiging malaki pa yan in the future. And however, ang titingnan natin doon na medyo ang ating maturity, ang ating time, kailan natin bawiin yung pera na ni-invest natin, at least mga 10 years. Kung pwede mo iwanan ng the next 10 years, iwanan muna doon, let it grow and let the things that are happening to make it to grow. Okay? Because the valuations are good, the earnings are good, the economy is good because the inflation is declining. Only El Nino seems to have a different negative impact in the foreign interest. So 5 itong factors. Out of the 5 factors, 3 are being handled well. El Nino, we really don't know, but it seems to be there. Since we know it's going to happen, we can prepare for that. And interest, we really don't need the foreigners to drive up our stock market prices. But if they come, even better for us. Okay? So, very attractive. At this level where we are now, the economy has improved, corporate earnings are higher, record low unemployment levels, sustained OFW remittance, inflation is easing at 5.4% in June, which means to say easing policy rates are to be expected in the future. Okay? So we are now better. And if you look at everything, we now ask the question, how can you, the ordinary Filipino, take advantage of this opportunity? Okay? So, ito ngayon, the difficulty is really in the fact that mahirap magpili. Okay? So, dahil mahirap magpili, the choice is you can just simply assign the task of investing your money for you. You assign this task to investment funds. Kaya option 6. Kasi kanina option ano na yun. And then option 5 and 6 pala, dapat option 7 ito. Investment funds. Investment funds is like owning part of several businesses. So i-divide natin into several units ang bawat fund na yan, may fund units siya. You buy several units of the fund. And then the fund buys several financial securities, either fixed or income or fixed securities or fixed income securities or equities. Okay, nasa sayo, the choice is yours. You saw my discussion kanina. I hope you understood what that meant. Like owning part of several businesses. And then the beautiful thing about it is that you hire the fund to manage your investment. Imbis na ikaw na mag-manage, ibigay mo sa fund. Pursuing your objectives, it researches, analyzes, and decides what, when, how much to buy or sell, invest, or divest of securities. All decisions that you would normally make on your own, which kung nagtatrabaho ka, mahirap gawin. Here you are focused on your job, tapos iintindihin mo pa yung investment mo, malaking bagay yon. So malaking kain sa oras mo yon. Why don't you just simply hire somebody to do it for you? Okay? We'll discuss in a while paano ang alternatives mo diyon. Then of course, because you hire somebody to do that for you, you have to pay the one that you hire. You pay the manager based on performance for your proportionate share of the fund. Hati-hati kayo, sharing kayo ng gastos diyan para manage yan. But the beautiful thing is you get expert and professional service. You can earn per unit even more than the businesses the fund invests in. That was true to my clients way back in 2007. Marami sa kanila, they earn much more than the businesses we invested in because the value of their investments in the investment funds doubled in just barely 2 or 3 years. Pwedeng mangyari yun kasi marami pang papasok na positive factors. Okay, here is an example of the Manulife funds. The green is the result of Manulife funds. The blue is the result of PSEI. So the first half of 2023, you notice PSEI was only at point something. Ano ba yan? 0.21, 0.22 something. Whereas Manulife returns for the Peso Growth Fund, first half of 9, isang fund lang ito, isang classic fund lang ito, Peso Growth Fund ang tawag dyan. More than 1%. So malayo ang distansya. Over the 1-year period, kanina nakita nyo malaki ang distansya. Ang Manulife na Peso Growth Fund earned 10%, whereas the PSI only earned 7.7%. So, that means to say, nasaan yung galing? Bakit kung nagsunod sa index yung Manulife, dapat ganun din na ang index mo. Pero nakakuha ng extra ang Manulife dahil may sariling pag-usisa ang Manulife. Okay? May pag-usisa. Now, in the Philippines today, there are many different funds. Okay? So far, out of the top 13 for the year, for 3 years, for the past 3, as a result of 3 years measuring, measure mula ng 2020. Measure from 2020 up to 2023. Sino mas malaki ang kinita? So rank number 2 ang equity wealth fund namin. 7 ang Peso Growth Fund, 8 ang Emperor Fund, and 13 ang Powerhouse Fund. Pero sa ranking ng yan, yung sa baba pa, ibang additional, I think this is 5 years ito, 5-year fund. Over the 5 years, however, mas malaki na ang kinita ng aming fund. Bakit ganon? Bakit iba-iba? Kasi pwedeng ang kinita mo mababa muna, pero dahil nag-position ka na kaagad, bumili ka na kaagad ng ownership at this time, tapos ang forecast mo, 5 years pa bumawi. Pagdating ng 5 years, babawi ka kung tama ang pagpipili. Ganun ang nangyari dito sa Peso Growth Fund, sa Emperor Fund, saka sa Powerhouse Fund. Ito lang ngayon ang problema, okay? Dahil sa binaba ng ating investments magmula pa ng 2016, okay? Hindi masyadong tumaas. Mostly, I think, because of the geopolitical situation. Hindi pa nakabawi totally. Kaya nakikita niyo ang returns for the last 5 years, hindi pa compared sa dati, hindi pa rin masyadong nakabawi. Nevertheless, nakikita niyo ang trend. The important thing is you see the trend, where it is going, and the trend is supported by the discussions that we have today kung saan nanggagaling yan. So here are investment ideas that are based on what we saw. First, continue to invest based on your investment objective and risk profile. Since we have a neutral view for major asset classes. Neutral naman pero meron kang makikita doon na pwedeng makikita mo. Hindi biased kasi pag sinabing neutral, tinitingnan namin lahat, ina-examine namin lahat, wala kaming bias. Conservative to moderate investors, magkakaroon pa rin ng market volatility sa second half considering investing in pero bababawi na siya going forward 2024. Bond investors consider multiple bond exposure. Wag lang isa. Asian bonds to capitalize our positive view on Asia investment grade bonds and Philippine bonds. Our inflation is likely to fall in the fourth quarter of 2023, and BSP is starting to cut interest rates by the second quarter of 2024. Kung equity naman ang napipili mo, continue to consider the local equities market as valuations are very attractive at this time. Favorable demographics continue to grow. Pinakita ko na sa inyo yung ating mga infrastructure tapos yung population natin. Global capital flows are cyclical, and it's about time that the global investors may again come back to the Philippines and drive up values even faster. Okay? So for the third quarter positioning, where are we going? Immediately in this quarter, we are very opportunistic. We're looking at individual accounts that have opportunities for investment. Siguro yun na siguro importante dapat matandaan nyo, that we are looking at investment securities based on the opportunities that present themselves. So in other words, titingnan natin ngayon ang process. So how do we do that? In Manulife, we have what we call the GCMV framework. We look at the growth of the securities. We look at the cash flow of these securities. We look at the management, kung sustainable ba o hindi. And after we compare everything, tinitingnan natin magkano ngayon ang bentahan sa market. Pag nakikita natin ang bentahan mura kaysa expected natin, then we buy. Pag nakikita natin ang bentahan ay mas mahal kaysa expected natin, then we sell. Yun ang tinatawag na GCMV. Okay? For example, sa equities natin, okay? There are 200 shares, there are 280 companies listed in the Philippine Stock Exchange. Ang unang screening diyan, filter out yung ibang, ang ititira na lang 70. Pipiliin sa 70 ngayon, isa-isang usisain kung silong pinakamagaling at titingnan ngayon 50. Targeting yung 50, imo-monitor muna bago papasukin. Monitor muna kung ang ating expectation is according to is met according to Ang performance pala ng company is according to our expectations. Pag nakita natin ganun, doon pa lang papasok ang investment natin. Otherwise, we put it in safe places. So investment ideas based on our outlook and asset allocation views. For income investors, gusto mo may income yung investment mo every year or every month, tingnan mo yung mga investment funds namin. Maganda. Nagbabayad talaga. Merong matutuwa ka kung may natatanggap ka sa bangko mo every now and then, regularly. And starting now, meron ka ng may exact na every month talaga. How about equity investors, yung bumibili ng shares of stock? Tingnan natin ang hindi lang sa Philippine economy but US economies, and especially sa mga healthcare and technology companies. And we look at short-term investments, yung pwede na kumita kagad sa mga bonds para ma-liquidate na kaagad yan at meron na tayong cash panagdag because the economy is growing. So tataas pa yun. Okay? And then, if you look at things, ito yung ngayon ang paano natin kino-compare against the index fund. Ang neutral dyan, kung saan tayo may positive factors. Green represents kung saan tayo positive na magkakaroon ng growth. So United States, emerging Latin America, yes. In Japan, yes. In fact, Japan is being touted again to become number 3 economy again in the world. No, Asia investments, fixed income, we have Asian yield, and we have emerging market debt. So alternatives, we have infrastructure, mga positive yan mga tinitingnan natin. So nakikita nyo sa green, we are not doing everything na nandyan. We are focused kung anong sectors ang nakikita natin that there will be positive growth. Okay. So that's as far. The only other snag that we would see. Ito yung this is where we come in really very critically. Okay. What if tonight you are taken out of the picture and you are not yet ready? Okay? Kasi simula mo lang. Pero wala ka na sa loob ng larawan. Wala ka na magagawa. Why? Let's take a look. The option 7 there is the life and health insurance. Kaya natin sinama yon. Bakit? Kasi in normal times, we are able to set aside money for our savings and investments. What we cannot predict is when illness or disability happens. We cannot predict that. It could happen, and you know very well, sino bang kakilala nyo na nangyari sa kakilala nyo yan? I'm sure every one of you knew somebody. Tapos hindi handa. Anong mangyayari? Income goes down. So dahil hindi ka makatrabaho, gagamitin mo lahat ng savings mo saka investments mo. Nakikita ko yan, nangyari yan sa mga kakilala ko na hindi nakahanda. Okay? Mabuti na lang medyo natulungan kasi nakapag-invest pa rin sila. Okay? But the second part of it is that tutuloy pa rin ang gastos mo. In fact, kung may sakit ka, lalong lalaki ang gastos mo. You must get well. But how? When you're sick and without money, how can you do that? So when that happens, you'll definitely experience a financial crisis. The important thing is to do something bago ito mangyari. Or let's take a look at the other picture. What if death happens and income completely stops? Expenses do not stop. Your family will need to live on. Your family will need to have daily expenses. And where are they going to get money for that? Okay? Kailangan ng lifestyle matuloy. Kailangan may solution dyan even before it happens. And if you have investments at mauubos nilang investments mo when these things happen, kailangan ma-protect natin yung investment mo. So, kailangan mawala yung financial crisis. So the only solution to that is maybe you could talk about a financial solution that combines investments and insurance. Now I'm into my last slide. Okay, I have not discussed how do you combine investments and insurance? Let that be the subject of the discussion ng inyong financial advisor, because we have many ways to do that. So, your next step to this is this. First, consult your financial advisor. After all, the service of the financial advisor is free for help. Okay? Specialist sila eh. Yun ang pinag-aralan nila. Ito talaga pinag-aralan na how to do this. Secondly, it's up to you to define what are your priorities, what are your goals, and what are your budgets. And when we talk of priorities and goals, we are talking of definite figures. Ha? Hindi lang ito yung basta papunta dyan pero wala tayong idea magkano. Kailangan maliwanag ang target natin. Kasi kung hindi natin identified gaano kamaliwanag ano ang target natin, hindi rin tayo makapag-target ng budget para dyan. Third, let your advisor design for you a financial strategy or a program especially designed for you, para lang sa'yo, custom designed for you. Wala pa ako nakikita na pare-pareho lagi ang financial program for any two persons because each one may definite na pangangailangan na hindi tugma doon sa isa. So, it's always a different program. Take advantage of the service of your financial advisor to design a financial strategy and program for you. And last but not least, easy step. Just go look at it. If you like the program, then approve it and then start putting money into it. So at this point, I would like to open the floor to your questions if you have any questions.